The New Testament scripture comes from the Gospel of Matthew, fifth chapter, beginning at the 13th verse. Hear the word of the Lord. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but is thrown out into the streets and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hidden. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. May the Lord add a blessing to the word. Let us pray. Almighty God, we pray that you'd open our hearts and our minds, that not only would we be hearers of your word, but that we would be doers of your word. The scripture I read to you comes from what we call the Sermon on the Mount. If you remember, it begins the 5th chapter of Matthew by saying that Jesus took his disciples and crowds followed them as they went up onto the mountain. And Jesus' purpose was to take them up on the mountain and be able to teach what it was his ministry was going to entail. And one of the clues we have for the importance Jesus placed on it, the gospel writer Matthew was sure to say, and when he got on the mountain, he sat down and he opened his mouth. The phrase, when he sat down, he opened his mouth, was a phrase they used of the rabbis when they had something that was of such importance everybody was supposed to pay attention to it. And they say the rabbi sat down and opened his mouth, and they go, ooh, we got something really deep to tell us. Well, it's true. Jesus has something deep to say. The 5th, 6th, and 7th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew is really the complete gospel story told in those 3 chapters. So it's pretty amazing. And I think at the heart of that story is the salt and the light. And if we think about that salt and that light, we think that what is it about salt that Jesus was so wanting to use that they would attach so much of familiarity with? Well, for us, salt, it's table salt, and we throw it here and we throw it there, and we don't think too much of it. But in 1st century, where Jesus was living, salt was a great commodity. They used it in trading. They highly regarded salt as something that you would want to procure. Salt was thought to be something that was pure, and salt was something that was thought to be great wealth to people. And the reason that it seemed it was pure is because of the whiteness of it. And there was nothing to dilute it. There was no specks of anything in it. It was just pure white. And they thought, well, that's purity. In fact, a lot of pagan religions would use it within their own worship to give offerings. And even the Jews at certain evening offerings would offer up salt. And so salt became that symbol of purity. But it wasn't just purity that salt was used for, of course. They used it as a preservative. Because after all, in that day, you didn't have a Samsung refrigerator with double doors and a freezer to keep food in. So food, and particular meat, wouldn't last very long at all. You had meat that you were going to try to keep, it would begin to decay and be useless in a very short period of time in the Palestinian sun. And so much so, the Romans used to say that salt into meat was like putting a soul into a body. It gives it new life. And, the people knew that was a saying. And they would say, well, we are salt. And if they put us as a soul into a body, then we are giving new life. And that's what Jesus is all about, is it not coming to give new life? And then salt also was used for flavor. And whenever you wanted something that was pretty, like an egg. How much taste does egg whites have if there's not a little salt on it? It's kind of flat. Lots of things are flat. Now, I know they overuse salt in soups in most restaurants. We figured that one out. when you're trying to watch your weight and water buildup and all that good stuff. But salt is important to our diet. And if we don't have enough salt, that can be bad as having too much salt. And the same was for the first century. And so when Jesus said all that about salt, it would have connected with them, because they were used to Jesus using very much plain speak. Jesus didn't get into all this big elaborate theological themes that I'm sure that he was taught through Hebrew school and talking about eschatological this and that. That he just said and used pictures around them that were very familiar to them, that they would be able to immediately know what Jesus was driving at. Now, they didn't always get it. We know that. But then again, we don't always get it. We have a lot better opportunity than they do. But when Jesus said about them, what good are you if you're of no use anymore? It gets thrown out in the street and trampled. That was another word picture for them, because they lined their stove ovens, their charcoal stove ovens, with salt, about that thick, all around. And that would hold heat, so it would more evenly distribute heat. But after a certain period of time, the salt wouldn't hold heat anymore. And they'd have to scrape it all out, and where are you going to throw it? They threw it out in the street. It was something they actually did. And people would come along and tramp it into the dirt. So they're going, wow, we're salt. Let's see, we are to infuse new life into a body. We're supposed to be pure. We're supposed to preserve. And we're supposed to give flavor. Well, we can think about that. What exactly does that mean? To be pure. I don't often think of myself as being pure, and Shirley would probably not argue that point either. In fact, I think sometimes she doesn't take me seriously enough. We were going to the doctor somewhere, and as we got out of the car and started toward the office, she said, wow, it's really cold out here. And I looked at her, and of course, I'm hardly ever cold. So I said, no, I don't think it's all that cold. And she says, yes, it is. And I said, no, it isn't. She says, yes, it is. I said, oh, yes, it is. And when we got up onto this little steps that go into the doctor's office, she said, well, if it's not cold out here, why don't you wait out here? I'll tie you to the post, and then whenever I come out, I'll just get you and we'll leave. So I guess it was like she's riding the horse in, tying it to the hitch, and then going to pick me up on the way out. Well, that's my purity story. We can't always be everything we want to be, but that doesn't mean we can't be something. It doesn't mean that we can't be something. There's a little parable that was told, and I read it in a devotional book, and the parable goes, there was a farmer who was out plowing his field. And as he was plowing, he noticed there was this little wee bird. And it was lying on its back with its feet up in the air. And he looked at it, and you could see it looked like it was alive. So he got off his tractor, and he went over to where this bird was. And he looked down at the bird, and he said to the bird, what, little bird, are you doing lying on your back with your little legs and feet sticking up in the air? And the little bird says, I was told that today the sky was going to fall, and I'm going to hold it up. And the farmer says, you think those spindly little legs and those little tiny feet are going to hold up the sky? And the little bird says, no, but I think I can maybe hold up enough over me. I can hold up my part. I can do something to hold up the sky. Well, that's really kind of profound, I think. We may not be those perfect people. We may not do all the right things all of the time and at the right particular time. You ever think when you walked away from somebody, wow, I wish I would have thought to say this, or I wish I would have thought to say that. I really should have been a little more on the ball. I think maybe I could have told them something that might have been help to them because they seemed to be struggling and straying, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it because I don't think that I am that religious. I don't know that they would take it the right way, etc., etc., etc. We may not be able to do that. But the one thing we can do is hold up the sky over our own head. We can do our little part. We can do something for purity's sake to be that salt. Well, then we move from the being pure or not being pure to the preserving kinds of things about salt. Salt was seen to be almost divine, as I had said. It was pure because, as the Romans said, that it came from the sun and from the sea. And so they thought it was the purest thing, and it was to use as a preservative. And because of that, Jesus used it and said, you be what infuses this new life and the new soul into people. You be the example. Well, here we go again. We got a problem. My life has been kind of a roller coaster. You know what I mean? I've had the good and been good, and I've gone down in the little valley thingy, and not necessarily done what was best for me, and then I'd come back up over the top again, and down and up and down and up. And so I think about myself, and I think, well, I hope people see me on the high spot, not the low spot. But they're going to see me on the low spot. The only consolation I have, if I can't be a good example, I can be a bad example. They can say, look what he did, and look what happened to him. That's what's going to happen to me. And we don't realize how people watch us, how people judge us, what they think about us. We are being watched all of the time. People with children are being watched how they raise their children, how they deal with them in the store, how the children react to different situations, all those things. People will go, they'll go home and talk about them. Well, if you're going to talk about us, why not talk about some good things and some good examples that we do? You know, some time ago, there was a reporter that was interviewing Robert Redford. And the interviewer said to him, I have a quote here that you had written in a book somewhere that says, it doesn't matter how you play the game. It only matters that you win. Is that true? And then Redford said, yeah, that's pretty much the way I live my life now. Whenever I was growing up and was a child, however, I was always taught it doesn't matter whether you win or lose. It's how you play the game. And he said, since then I have learned that it doesn't matter what you do to get there, you just got to win. Maybe you got to tramp on somebody. And that's so sad. It's so sad because he started off in such a good keel there, knowing that it does matter that whether how you play the game. It's not an end justifies the means that you get there. And our life is not full of that. Jesus' life wasn't like that, and neither should our life be. Lessons we are taught as a child can and should last us all through our lives. I was reading in a devotional, and there was a story in there of a retired school teacher. She had been retired for years. And she was in Kmart, and she was on a line, and it was slowly moving up, and she was moving up with the line. She happened to notice that behind her was this young couple with 4 children. And the children were running all around them, and you know how they do, and the wife had this nose ring into her nose, and earrings, and all that kind of stuff all over. And the guy, he had this tattoo on the side of his neck, and she said, I thought, well, I bet he was in prison with that skull thing on his neck. And she looked at him, and he was dressed with this, you know, the baggy pants with the big chain hanging down. And she said, he's probably a gang member, too. And she went on about his haircut, how it was shaved, and there was different signatures and signs in the side of his hair. And she thought, as she got up to the counter, she was thinking, I'd rather have him in front of me than behind me. So she turned to the young man and his family, and she said, why don't you go ahead? The young man looked at her and smiled and said, ma'am, I've always been taught to respect my elders. Why don't you go ahead? It's fine. I don't need to go through. The kids will be okay. And she says, no, I insist. No, he says, I insist. And he went like this to show her the way. And so as she did go up to the counter and start putting her things there, she turned to him and she said, I'm just curious, young man, where did you get your manners? Well, he said, Mrs. Wilson, from you. You were my third grade teacher. I bet that stood her back just a little bit. It does tell us that we really can't judge what someone as they look. And here's a young man that really did learn a lesson in the third grade and carried it on through. How many stories have we heard like that? It's amazing to me how I can remember some things that teachers have said to me. Some I won't repeat. But some things that teachers have said to me that I carried on. I never forget a auto mechanics class I was in. And the instructor would always tell me, you know, you're not as smart as you think you are. And, you know, you're just like a pencil mark. And there's always someone that comes along that has an eraser. So, that was years and years and years ago. So I learned maybe I'm not as important as I think I am. Of course, when you're 17, 18, you think you're pretty important. But I remember that, and that's been a long time. But we can do the things that can be helps to others. And it's not just being a bad example. It's taking bad things and being a good example of the bad things. How many people have gone through and beat cancer? And how many of those people who have done that have been such a help to other people who are going through that at a particular time in their lives? How many people have had different diseases and have managed to conquer, or they've managed to live with dignity and a good quality of life, and they've been an inspiration to so many other people? And that's really being that preservative of holding people together. And then we think, well, what about that flavor of life? What does it mean? You know, it's so amazing how many times I've heard people say, I've been to church and it was so depressing. You know, I've been to church and I really didn't get anything out of it. I've been to church and they sing these dumb hymns and I don't like them. I don't like the way they stand up, sit down. I don't like all that stuff. It just seems to be a waste of time. They always seem so sad. They seem so serious. Can't they ever smile? Can't they ever laugh? Can't they ever tell a joke? Well, I've never been here. Because that's one thing we do. And I think it's great. I think it's great when I can look out and I can see smiles in the congregation. I think it should be joyful and it should be fun. It should be better than the Super Bowl. And I'll even say that. You realize there are people that are spending from $3,000 to $10,000 for one night to rent a house for the Super Bowl out in Texas, in Houston. There's people who are paying $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for a ticket to get within 2 miles. They have to use binoculars to look down on the stadium and see what's going on. And the same people say, I don't want to go to church, too much trouble. Well, the difference is people are cheering, people are happy, people are coming together with joy in that stadium. We should be coming together with joy. We have something that is so far superior to anything else in this whole world that it should be celebrated and not lamented. And so we are the salt, and we are the light. And we can be the guide, and we can be the warmth. We can be all the things that salt and light can be. And we owe it as our responsibility to this community to be that salt and light. May God bless us. Amen. Let us say...